everyone, and welcome to God's Plan, Your Part, a podcast where our goal is to read the entire Bible in a year, seeking to understand God's plan of redemption while discovering daily and practically your part in it.
So have you ever been there when you were trying to do something cool and somebody definitely calls you out, thinks you're doing the wrong thing, and they tell on you? This is like the story of my children's life every day.
So this is the tattling passage?
Yeah, so we're in Ezra chapters 4 through 6 today, and it just sounds like there's a lot of playground talk and smack talk going on. The people were granted permission to go back to start building the temple. They were given permission by Cyrus, not Cyrus. I keep wanting to say the wrong name.
Yeah.
But they were given permission to do this and were given materials that were taken into exile with them back in Babylon. And they were given those materials to go back and make this temple that they had desired to do post-exile. So they're building this, and then these guys come along. Actually, who are the guys?
They're just like the people dwelling in the land. Some of them are actually exiles themselves. They're just exiled in Jerusalem.
Gotcha.
And some of them are it seems like native to the land.
Well, anyway, they're like the Karens of the Bible right now.
Oh,
and they're
goodness.
like, are you allowed to be building that there? Because I'm pretty sure that's not a thing. And they actually act like they want to build the temple with them just to see what they're doing. And they go back to the king, King Darius.
No, it's a different king.
What?
So Cyrus releases the people. Artaxerxes is the one who receives the letter from these people that want the temple to stop.
Oh, and Darius is the one that goes
is the
to
one that
find
lets them
the
go back.
evidence that says, hey, it's cool, leave them alone.
You can recognize the name Darius because Darius is king when Daniel is thrown into the lion's den.
Yes. So it's basically this weird, well, I'm going to tell because you shouldn't be doing this kind of situation. So it just sounds very childish. They're just trying to do what they were told to do, and these guys just won't leave them alone.
Yeah. The interesting thing is, I'm sure they were all very disappointed when they had to stop construction.
Right.
But when Darius rediscovers Cyrus's decree, not only does he make sure that construction continues, he makes sure that it is completely paid for.
Right, because that is also allotted within.
Yeah, and so
decree.
What's really interesting about God's sovereignty over this situation is that not only is the temple getting rebuilt, it's basically getting rebuilt for free.
Mm-hmm.
The original temple articles are being returned, and the revenue of the kingdom is being used to build the temple. I think actually the text tries to make it clear that the revenue of the people who are complaining is being used to rebuild the temple.
You know what's interesting though? As we were going through this, it's pretty short little narrative.
Yeah, short little stories.
But what's interesting to me is that I know there are a lot of times in my own life or things that I have heard of other people's experiences where they are finally back on the right track and something or someone, situation, whatever comes along and just halts what you were finally I'm able to start moving in the right direction, and then this happens or this person shows up and this situation messes up the path to what you thought was so clear. And I'm sure that this is no different for these men who are trying to build up the temple, and they're finally getting moving, they're already in a pretty desperate spot to begin with because they are coming back from exile, and so they're ready to go, and these guys just waving the flag sorry, you're not supposed to be doing this right now. I'm pretty sure this is not what's supposed to be going on.
What's really interesting to me is that a theme of many of these ancient books has been that God is in control of all these kingdoms and leaders, and so it is a temporary setback, but God wants his temple rebuilt. And
right.
God wants his people to return. And so it's God who works in Darius's heart and mind to say, no, we need this done.
Yeah.
So, and I do wonder, it is Darius also that when Daniel comes out of the lion's den, Daniel's basically motivates Darius to say there is no God but Daniel's God, and you will only pray to Daniel's God. I am kind of making up some extra biblical things here. I'm not sure if those two things are connected, but certainly it would be interesting to see if they were.
Well, I think very practically speaking though, going back to that idea, how often, you talked about setbacks, how often do we allow setbacks to have so much authority in our minds, in our hearts, when we know that we're following the Lord and what he wants, and we're being super dedicated and disciplined, like you were talking about in yesterday's episode, how we can be so sold out, and then a minor setback, or maybe in this case, it seems like a major setback comes along, and it's like you're ready to throw the towel in, throw your hands in the air, and be like, whatever, I'm done trying. Like, this is not worth it. I'm really trying, God, but it just like one thing after another, I'm done. So how often do we do that in our own lives too, where we could so easily just be like, nope, I'm not. And I could think of our own lives personally, Ryan and I. We've gone through some very tricky situations recently where it just feels like, okay, we're going to start going in the right direction. And it's just like one thing after the next, just setback, setback, setback. And looking back, it felt annoying and very frustrating in those moments. But looking back now, it's like, wow, if God would not have allowed that setback to happen, his plan of where we are right now, we would have been in a very different place. And I'm so thankful for those setbacks and for those moments where I was ready to throw my hands up or tell somebody exactly how I felt. And it was just like, no, this is like God's going to do what he's going to do, regardless of how broken or frustrated I feel by those setbacks that come into play.
And the way that God brings this about, it's pretty much only God, I think. Like, God moves in Darius's heart, and Darius says, yeah, we're rebuilding it. Stop it. Stop
complaining. It doesn't even make sense, because you were saying yesterday, Cyrus, his heart was like sold out to some random god.
Yeah.
And like, that doesn't even make sense that he would have decreed that either.
Yeah, there's many things where people are acting on behalf of God's will and God's plan. And so I think just remind yourself in those times of setbacks that you don't serve people. Right. And people have power to influence your life. Obviously they do, but they do not have the ultimate power to influence your life. So what a silly thing to work against what God already desires.
Or to give someone else God's power in your mind.
Yeah, like that temple, the work stopped for a bit, and then all at once was like, we're gonna rebuild this thing, and actually it's getting built for free, and all the sacrifices are going to be provided by the kingdom. It's very weird, but it does happen. There is a little bit of an interesting extra credit point here. We have seen many times where the tabernacle is constructed. We have seen the temple be constructed. And every time so far, when we have seen the completion of the work and these grand celebrations, we have seen the Lord's presence fall in those places. So God's glory filled the tabernacle. God's glory filled the temple. Even in Ezekiel's vision, God's glory filled the temple.
Is that like reference to the cloud?
Yeah, like the God's cloud, like his presence fills the temple. Yeah. We do not see God's presence fill this temple. So it is a more janky temple. It made the old men cry. And God's presence, at least it's not recorded. So this is not to say that it's not a real temple. It's not to say that it's not a place for sacrifice and all those things. It is worth noting that God's presence does not seem to appear in this temple. At least it's not formally recorded in Ezra. So I think as far as your part for today, we kind of already covered it. Like, don't be distracted by setbacks. But also, man, okay, so this is my thing. Jenny was talking about how we've suffered some setbacks lately. Every I should know better by now, but every time I encounter a setback, I figure out what to do about it 110% myself. Like, it's like, okay, this is happening, so I need to get 3 steps ahead of it, 10 steps ahead of it. This is what I'm going to do, then this is what I'm going to do, then this is what I'm going to do. And a lot of times my own planning consumes my thoughts. I think what we're trying to point out here is that don't figure it out on your own. Allow God to figure it out for you. If it is something that God has intended, God will see it through. And we have seen that over and over and over and over. And that does not mean that God always intends for you to have the easiest, best, most wealthy option, because it was God's will that the people go into exile, and he made sure it happened. Now it's God's will that people return and that their temple get built, and God is making sure that it happens. So put your hope in God. Take a deep breath, step away from the situation, pray about it, seek the Lord in prayer, fast over it.
And let God be God, not you be God.
That's exactly right. So we are going to step a little bit away from Ezra for a second. We got some other books to cover, but we'll be back again tomorrow with Haggai. We'll see you then.
Thanks so much for listening to God's Plan, Your Part. If anything stuck out to you, if you have any questions, or if you'd like to receive a Bible, you can email us at godsplанyourpart@gmail.com. Also, if you're enjoying the podcast, please consider supporting us through the link in our description. We love that you're on this journey with us, and we hope you have a great day. See you tomorrow.